Today, Times Square is one of the most famous places on Earth. Every day, nearly 400,000 people pass through this intersection, surrounded by massive LED screens, Broadway theaters, and endless streams of tourists taking photos. It's the place where millions gather each year to watch the iconic New Year's Eve ball drop. Bright lights, giant billboards, non-stop energy. But just a few decades ago, this same place had a very different reputation. In the 1970s and 80s, Times Square was considered one of the most dangerous areas in America, a district filled with prostitution, porn theaters, street crime, and organized gangs. What happened here is one of the strangest transformations in the history of New York City. 200 years ago, Times Square didn't exist. Back then, this part of Manhattan had a completely different name, Longacre Square. Instead of giant screens and crowds of tourists, the streets were filled with horse-drawn carriages, repair workshops, warehouses, and a few small theaters. It wasn't a place people came for entertainment. It was simply a busy industrial district, noisy, dusty, and practical. Everything changed in 1904 when the newspaper, the Times New York, built its new headquarters here. Soon after, the city renamed the square Times Square, and when the first electric signs appeared, this ordinary corner of Manhattan began its transformation into the glowing heart of New York. At the dawn of the 20th century, Times Square began to transform. Theaters started booming, and the area around Broadway quickly became the heart of New York's entertainment scene. Huge musical productions, lavish reviews, and variety shows drew crowds every night, turning the streets into a world of lights and music. Times Square became synonymous with nightlife, a place where the city came alive after dark. Opulent movie theaters opened their doors, cabarets lured audiences with glamour, and elegant restaurants catered to the city's bohemian elite. But with all the glitter and spectacle came a shadow, the darker, seedier side of New York's night, quietly creeping into the lively streets. After World War II, the golden age of Times Square slowly began to fade. By the late 1940s and 1950s, many of the grand theaters that once defined the district started to close their doors or move elsewhere. At the same time, crime across New York City was rising, and the character of the neighborhood began to change. Times Square gradually shifted away from elegant entertainment. Cheap bars, strip clubs, and questionable businesses began replacing the theaters and restaurants that once attracted the city's elite. As property values dropped, many legitimate businesses moved out, leaving empty buildings and fading marquees. And into that vacuum came a new kind of nightlife that would soon give Times Square a far darker reputation. By the 1970s, Times Square had entered its darkest chapter. The once glamorous theater district was now filled with porn theaters and peep shows, their neon signs glowing over streets that had lost their former elegance. Sidewalks that once welcomed theatergoers increasingly dominated by prostitutes, drug dealers, and street hustlers. Crime was everywhere, and Times Square quickly gained a reputation as one of the most dangerous places in New York City. Tourists who once came for bright lights and Broadway now avoided the area altogether, especially after dark. In movies and television, Times Square was no longer portrayed as the dazzling heart of New York, but as a symbol of urban decay and the city's struggle with crime and decline. By the late 1970s, Times Square had become synonymous with crime. Robberies, drug dealing, and street violence were no longer rare incidents. They had become part of everyday life in the district. Behind many of the bars, adult theaters, and street operations were organized criminal networks running illegal businesses right in the heart of New York City. Police patrols were frequent, but the scale of the problem made the area incredibly difficult to control. As the situation worsened, Times Square earned a reputation that spread far beyond the city itself. For many ordinary New Yorkers, it became a place you simply avoided, especially after dark. In the early 1990s, city leaders in New York City launched an ambitious plan to reclaim Times Square. Authorities began shutting down porn theaters, illegal clubs, and many of the businesses that had defined the darkest years. At the same time, the city worked to attract major corporations and investors back into the area. New theaters opened, restaurants returned, and global brands began moving into buildings that once had been symbols of urban decay. Slowly but surely, Times Square started transforming again. Within just a few years, the neighborhood that people once avoided had become one of the most visited places in the world, a bright, crowded center of tourism and entertainment. Today, Times Square is almost unrecognizable from its past. What was once a symbol of crime and urban decay has become one of the most visited tourist destinations on Earth. Towering LED screens light up the streets, massive advertisements flash day and night, and crowds gather for shows, events, and performances. Every year, millions of people from around the world come here to experience the energy of the crossroads of New York City. But beneath the bright lights and constant crowds lies a history many visitors never realize they're standing in the middle of.
Thanks for watching. I hope you found this journey through the history of Times Square as fascinating as I do. Making videos like this takes a lot of time and effort, so if you enjoyed it, a like really goes a long way. It truly helps me keep creating more. If you want to see more amazing stories from history and what-if scenarios, make sure to subscribe and join the journey. It means the world to me.